I've recently been in the United States, and I found in Los Angeles this wonderful National Center for the Preservation of Democracy. And I thought, wow, that's nice to have, but then I discovered it was closed. And in fact, democracies have come under pressure in quite a few countries recently, including Turkey, Poland, and France. That means really close by. And not only democracy is under pressure, also our financial system, our economy, even capitalism. And Günther Oettinger, the Commissioner of the European Union for the Digital Agenda, says we are in a digital struggle for survival. By 2020, we'll know what are the companies that will survive this digital transformation, what are the countries that survive it, and we don't have time to lose. Because there is now an automation going on, a new wave of industrialization, you could say, driven by data and by digital technologies, and that is putting our societies under pressure. In particular, many people expect that about 50% of today's jobs will be gone in 10 to 20 years. Of course, there will be new jobs, but it's hard to say how these jobs would look like. And there's also a challenge actually for companies, because in the next 10 years, about 40% of top 500 companies will be gone. So what we can certainly say is that there is a digital revolution which is now transforming our society entirely. All the businesses, all the institutions, the economy, and the entire society. And all of this is driven by data, big data. Within just 1 minute, we are sending 700,000 Google queries, 500,000 Facebook posts, while we go shopping, while we move. All of that produces data, digital traces that allows us to do all sorts of things with it. And people say data is the new oil, so you can make a lot of money with this new resource. However, who should own it? Should it be big corporations? Should it be the government? Should it be the people? And in order to understand that better, let's have a look at this graph over here. Moore's law says that processing power doubles every 18 months, so there is an exponential increase. However, it turns out that data volume increases even faster. It doubles every 12 months. Within 1 year, we produce as much data as in all the years before. That means in the entire history of humankind. It's hard to believe, but this is what happens, and it implies that actually the percentage of data that we can ever process is decreasing over time. Dark data that we can never process is increasing all the time. And as we go on networking the world, systemic complexity increases actually factorial. That means even faster than the amount of data. And that basically implies that it would be less and less easy to control systems in a top-down way. We need to have an entirely new control paradigm, which is bottom-up control, distributed control. And talking about society, it means more participation of the citizens. That means we need to build digital democracy, upgrade our democracy with digital means. Open data is needed for many things: to support better decisions, to enable participation, that means digital democracy, to create new jobs, that means to support the digital economy, to find new solutions to the world's problems, and to build a circular and sharing economy. And in fact, there's a lot of value that can be created. Between $3 and $5 trillion each year just with open data. Now, everyone could benefit from this. We just need to make it happen. So we need to build this new open data source. Actually, we can now build a real-time data source. And just imagine we would kind of extend the Wikipedia principle to all the data that would now become available. And in fact, we are working on such a platform. It's called Nervousnet. Now, the point is, we're expecting to enter this digital economy and digital society and to have a lot of jobs that are basically using data, a lot of data. But citizens today don't have access to a lot of data. How should this really work out? And so it's important that we make data accessible. So why don't we produce these data together? Because Google wouldn't give their data to us, Facebook wouldn't give their data. We can now produce data ourselves. And it's easy because everyone has a smartphone. And those smartphones contain a lot of sensors, about 15 of them. We could use those sensors to do measurements together. Actually, we could build a global measurement system. However, what we would care about is that we can trust the system. It wouldn't spy on us, right? So it's really important to run this Internet of Things as a citizen web together and to have informational self-control. And this is what we care about. So in our app that we're building in our platform, the Nervousnet platform, you can choose what are the sensors that you want to open up, and whether you want to open up those sensors just for yourself, say for a smart home application, or whether you want to share these data with others. You are in control. And we would build a participatory system, a system that creates new opportunities for everyone. And there are actually 3 levels of engagement, or crowdsourcing, we could say. First of all, data production. Second of all, these data are being made available to people. That means data analytics is another way of engaging with the system. And then you could also build your own apps, Internet of Things apps or Nervousnet apps. And this is not just a dream. We've been working on this for a little while. There are many young people involved in this. They find it very exciting. And of course, it should be fun interacting with this system. That's why we've also worked on some games. And one of these games is called Treasure Hunt. So basically what it does is it turns your smartphone into something like a radar system that would be able to detect certain kind of objects that provide us Bluetooth signal, right? So just imagine a digital kind of Easter egg search, right? This is what it would be. But this is just a game. Of course, we can do a lot of serious things with this. And in fact, we can do real-time measurement with Nervousnet. We could create greater awareness. We could also advance science and support self-organizing systems and collective intelligence. And now I want to zoom a little bit into these different areas. So real-time measurement. Yeah, it's really important to improve our world, to know what are the effects of interactions between people, between companies, and the environment. And that's called externalities. We need to measure and quantify and value this. And for example, we can use our smartphones to measure noise, right? We could create a noise map of our city, of any city, in real time. And we could actually also use acceleration data. Now, if just your smartphone is shaking, you might just be biking with your mountain bike, but if all our smartphones are shaking at the same time, that would probably be an earthquake, and we would want our friends and family to be warned so they can get in a safe space quickly. We can also create greater awareness to take better decisions. So we can build new compasses for decision makers that would be able to make things visible that we can't see or hear or feel, such as social capital, reputation, trust, solidarity, for example. You could also map crisis, and of course there are these kind of apps already available, crowdsourced apps. And we can advance science to understand the world, because the big unsolved problems of the world result often from systemic instabilities. Not very dangerous, but annoying example is traffic jams. Phantom traffic jams form even though nobody wants this to happen, even though everyone seems to have all of the data needed to do a good job, to drive fluently. Everyone is well educated, has a driver's license and good technology. But still, the interaction leads to a situation that produces these traffic jams that nobody wants. And it happens because small variations are amplified, and there is something like a domino effect that creates this outcome. These kinds of problems actually occur in many systems, in certain kinds of supply chains, even the world economy, where we have booms and recessions, or they could produce terrible crowd disasters that nobody wanted to cause. Then also, crime seems to be having this systemic instability dynamics, tragedies of the commons, overuse of resources, pollution, all these kind of things. Situations where cooperation would be favorable for everyone, but in the very same way as this fluent flow in the traffic circle was not stable, is cooperation unstable in these kind of social dilemma situations, and that's what produces those tragedies of the commons. Conflicts are other examples, and also revolutions. So basically the common element is that small local variations can actually eventually mess up the entire system. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It might take years, but we are right now seeing this in our financial system. After the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, in fact, hundreds of banks went bankrupt. And that produced costs of hundreds of billions of dollars. Right? So we don't want this to happen. And in order to avoid such things from happening, we need to have real-time feedback, the right kind of feedback to support a kind of self-organization that we'd like to have. And what I'm saying is that now, 300 years after this idea of the invisible hand was formulated, it's now possible to make the invisible hand work by creating feedback loops. And we can do that actually on many different levels. Now from your office, your company, up to global economy, or from the quarter of town to the entire city, to the entire country. And in fact, here is an example that shows how we can overcome problems in this way. At the moment, I'm just showing you a simulation of these stop-and-go waves that we've seen before, to show you that we understand the process, that we can reproduce it, and that we want to see actually what has caused these stop-and-go waves. So we'll now use a drone in order to see the situation from above, and we'll see that there is actually an on-ramp where some vehicles are trying to get on the freeway that produces small disruptions, and these disruptions are amplified, which produces the stop-and-go traffic. Now assume that we would equip, say, 30% of cars with radar sensors that measure distances and relative velocities and would be used to make cars drive automatically. Now, this allows us to change the interactions in such a way that the traffic flow is stabilized and the capacity is increased in a totally decentralized way. And you can see this is a possibility to get rid of those traffic jams. In a similar way, have we actually created a self-organized traffic light control, where the traffic flows control the traffic lights rather than the other way around. So there is a flexible response to the actual traffic situation, to the actual demand, and it turns out that this is actually good for all modes of transport. Everyone is saving time, and it's also good for the environment. So why don't we do this? And in fact, decentralized approaches are also becoming more popular in energy systems, so-called smart grids, and also in Industry 4.0, where now basically the products can talk to each other and they can talk to the machines to self-organize themselves. Now we could go a step further and build digital assistants to support the self-organization of the entire economy and the society. Just think of a route guidance system. Here, people are in control. They can turn it on and off. They choose the goal. Then the device gives you some choices. Yeah? Minimize travel time or greenhouse gases. then you choose, and then the assistant helps you to achieve your goal as efficiently as possible. We can also build reputation systems to increase quality of interaction with companies and between people and all this. We can build even more sophisticated digital assistants to increase situational awareness and support us in interactions with others or avoid interactions that wouldn't be good for us. Just think, for example, of a real-time translation app, which you can download to your smartphone and talk to it in one language, and on the other phone it will come out in a different language. So these are tools that can help us to overcome cultural barriers. We can go even a few steps further and build digital guides that would allow us to understand how these different cultures around us work. And in fact, this is important. Every culture is built up on thousands of hidden success principles. We could learn about those success principles and operationalize them and combine them in new ways, so we would come up with better solutions to the world's problems. And that leads us actually to collective intelligence to master our future. The world is so complex, no single person can fully understand it. No supercomputer, no artificial intelligence systems can do that. And that's why we need to combine the knowledge and the ideas of many people and create collective intelligence. And the interesting thing about this is there's no single solution that is best. It's the combination of many solutions that performs best. So diversity outperforms the individual. And in order to facilitate this, we need to build online deliberation platforms where we can collect all those different ideas and arguments and sort them out and basically figure out what are the main perspectives on a problem, and then combine those perspectives into innovative integrated solutions. And we also need to upgrade capitalism, not just democracy. And it's now possible, in fact, to create a liberal, democratic, participatory, social, and ecological kind of capitalism by combining Internet of Things technology with blockchain technology and complexity science. So what we need to accomplish is to build a circular economy that would use the limited resources of the world in a much more efficient way, avoid waste as much as that can be done, and also to promote a sharing economy, which would be part of this giant circular economy that we need to build. We haven't made much progress, though, in the past years in terms of building this circular economy. Sharing economy have made quite some progress, though. We can now map resources and who uses them. And for this, we have actually built an app which is called Swarm Pulse. It's in an early stage, but it gives you already an idea that we can actually together map the world. We can take pictures, we can do video recordings or audio recordings of any place and basically map it in a global map. And this is not enough, however. I personally believe we need to build a multi-dimensional incentive and reward system, something that I call qualified money, or also Finance 4.0, a socio-ecological kind of finance system. Now, this would actually create money in a bottom-up way. While you do measurements about the world, while you measure externalities of different kinds, you would also create money. And that can now be done. Bitcoin has shown that money can be created in a bottom-up way. And that money would then rise to the top, so it would pass by everyone. Everyone would benefit. And that would allow us actually to turn this digital desert that Europe is at the moment, where there's just a few big data companies and otherwise nothing, into a wonderful digital rainforest where there's abundance, where there are resources for everyone, and a large degree of diversity. So it's now time to build an information innovation production and service ecosystem together. Something that enables us to combine existing services and products to build new services and products and unleash combinatorial innovation and thereby create all those new jobs that we need. So let's do this together, and the first step would be actually to create Fab Labs, makerspaces, open innovation centers, and Nervousnet cafes, say, in every major city, and work together to build these systems that will produce data for everyone and share our ideas and the innovations, and then grow this global as OpenStreetMap has done it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have one question up at the knee board over there. Any additional questions? Down or go around. What we want to do is cluster a couple of questions. It's not that much time like that. Yeah, come in a minute. The question that was put up is the question about gamification.
Right.
Comment being, many of the examples that you do see, and you mentioned one as well, the treasure hunt. How critical is it to have a gamification element in it, and what happens if you don't? How necessary is that? Any insights already from your experience?
Well, I would say gamification is actually quite valuable to motivate people to engage with the system. And this is basically what experiences of similar platforms has shown. So, people want to have fun. Of course, we want to do something also to improve the state of the world, but telling people you should do this or do that usually doesn't work well, right? So if it's fun doing it, it's much better. And so we want to engage people in a gaming and sportive spirit, basically, So it would be rewarding in a double way. So it would be fun, and at the same time they would be doing something good.
And that means that if we don't find a way of making it fun,
I think, why should we be able to do this? I mean, basically the entire gaming industry is built on this, And we've also seen that for many decades we have been talking about global warming and climate change, and that people should change their behavior and so on. And this didn't change so much. Some people change their behavior, but not to the extent it's needed, right? So we really need to have a new approach. I'm thinking, for example, of what I call city Olympics or climate Olympics, basically to engage people into doing the things that we should be doing, but make it a social experience, a pleasant experience. And why should we do so?
Hello, my name is Ronald van Dijen. I'm a new student at Open. I wonder, in what sense do you think that open data is a necessary condition for more data exchange in common? Because you could doubt if all data will be open again. So depending on what kind of model the company is using, I think it's more important to get data together, maybe with uncertain conditions, but focusing on open data is maybe a bit idealistic.
That's an interesting question, and of course companies also collect data, and a lot of that data hasn't been made open in the past and would probably also not be made open in the future, but maybe it's nevertheless a good idea to think about it. I would not plea to force them to do this, but it might nevertheless be a good idea for them for a number of reasons. First of all, a lot of companies have data and they have no idea what to make, how to make use of all that data. They have a few applications, but there's a lot more value in their data, and they have no idea in many cases what they could do on top of the classical uses with their data. even if they had the idea, the question is, would they find all the data scientists and programmers and developers that would be needed to really turn the data into value? Because we don't have an infinite amount of programmers and data scientists in Europe, right? So it might be a good idea to open up data, because then people might come up with their own proposal what could be done with this data, and come up with business models that that company has not even thought about, right? So the point is really that an ecosystem could be much more powerful than if every company basically competes with every other company. In Europe in particular, we have this problem to catch up with the Silicon Valley, for example, right? We're many years late. Even if you would manage to have the same exponential growth as the United States in this business, the separation would increase. That's an implication of the exponential growth function, right? So that means if we want to catch up, we need to have a different kind of strategy. And I think the only way to catch up is to engage in an ecosystem approach. Most companies wouldn't be able to mobilize enough resources to build their own competitive platform. So if they can't do that themselves, they should come up with cooperations. And that means a cooperative network. And why not more or less open network, a participatory network where new companies, new players can join in. I mean, of course, it's entirely their choice, but I think being first is important, much more important than...
Sorry for interrupting, but there's one question coming in on ethics now. So if you're saying as many people as possible build that tropical rainforest, why do you hope that in the cooperation process, ethics, or the right ethical balance will be found? For doing,
Well, I think when we talk about ethics, then regulation seems to be always late. And there are a few things that seem to help to get things in good order. One is transparency, and the other thing is actually balance of forces, right? So we've certainly run into a situation where big data has created some very powerful players, a few companies and governments, say, and that has changed the power balance. Citizens and users and customers have probably lost power for some time, and that's pretty dangerous because the functionality of our complex, modern, pluralistic society depends on this delicate balance of power, right? If just a few people...
There's no need for standards when going into the cooperation process? When you engage people and say, okay, build something.
Well, I'm
sort of the basic principles of, and oh, by the way, don't do that. Is there sort of a cut-off point?
I don't say that we shouldn't make attempts to create standards, but the overall concept that we should be thinking in is co-evolution, right? I mean, things are changing all the time, in particular in the digital economy, and they're changing, very fast, right? So standardization might be also maybe too slow to catch up with that incredible pace. The question is, aren't there any better approaches?
Thank you very much. This was my question. My name is Arne University. What you are suggesting is regulation, which is a very low level of compliance. You should think about level of compliance. But as you have explained, it is vast, it's complex, and it is a viable system you are thinking about. So what about integrity? And I do think we need to really invent integrity, and then we don't talk about regulation. So what is your opinion about that, and how does this effective co-creation
Right.
Can you give a quick example? Concrete example you might have in your...
Well, I was thinking about virtue, like Aristotle's. So what is the virtue of the system we are now going to enter?
This is a very interesting question. Now, at the moment, we are in a situation where we do have laws such as data protection laws, but it seems like many players have not paid attention to them. And so that means laws haven't done the job so far, at least, right? Because there hasn't been fines that would make people comply. Now, what I do think is that we need to make up our minds as society how our future society should look like, the digital society of the future. Because there are different possibilities of data-driven societies. There could be feudalism 2.0, there could be communism 2.0, fascism 2.0, democracy 2.0, what I prefer, capitalism 2.0, socialism 2.0. You know, we need to talk about this. We need to take a decision. Then we can also figure out how to use all those technologies that are now at our disposal to build this kind of society. So that comes down to selecting a set of values that we think are important in our society, and then to design for values, right?
And these values, try to get the next question in. One of these values, could that be the amount of control or the amount of personal control you can have? For example, you're sketching a picture of a pretty much automated society, automated in a good way, but at the same time, how much agency is left to the individual? Is that...
Well, I think I'm more or less very nervous for my iPhone, because every now and then something pops up. Tomorrow you have a very busy schedule. Are you sure you can manage or something like that? So if you leave now for the next destination, you will be there at that time. I don't even know how to program it. The next thing is that you have to skip something because the diary is that really much more medicine?
Now, I do think that these digital assistants, should be working on our behalf and not on behalf of a certain company, as it happens at the moment, right? So I'd like my personal data to be locally stored and not centrally stored. That's why Nervousnet is a decentralized system. And there was, okay, so the kind of values, informational self-determination, I think, is really a fundamental value. If we're losing this, we'll eventually lose control over our lives. Pluralism, participation, there are many values that matter in our society today. Of course, we might reflect on, is it still up to date, or would we replace some values by other values? I don't think that we should give up privacy completely. I don't see that people would want this and that this would be helpful for society, because privacy creates protected spaces, and that's important for a number of reasons, in particular also creativity and innovation and things like those. So even though I believe we'll see a more and more automated society, there are two ways of automation. One would be a society that would be centrally controlled in a top-down way. I don't think this is a good idea, because it would undermine creativity and innovation, and we need more innovation in future to master the challenges of our society and of the globe. And the other approach is this bottom-up self-organization and self-regulation, and that requires the right kind of mechanism. So basically, emergence by design, values by design, privacy by design, these kind of things, right? And we need to figure out how to build systems in such a way that they would produce outcomes that are compatible with those values that we care about. And that is something that people start thinking about and working on, and I think that will create a new framework for our society, which will allow for this creativity and self-control and all the other things that are important for us.
And you're talking about looking at society, the agents that are in society. You've talked about the average citizen that could gain much more control about data that is used, that is collected. On the other hand, you're talking about the multinationals that have that control at the moment in the current system. This conference has been about the city, which is sort of a midway agent, if you like. On the 12th of September, for example, we have the inaugural session of the Global Parliament of Mayors in The Hague. There's going to be 100 mayors around the world thinking about the future of the city. There's climate change and refugees as one of the key topics. They know they live in a connected world. They know they have to organize their cities in that context. What would you recommend them to do, given that there's a tension between letting go and the mandate and public responsibility by the municipalities to create value, to create services that make sense to people living in that city? How would you?
I think we're now seeing a paradigm shift actually in the way cities of the future will be organized. We've been talking in the past about smart cities, and some of that has been a pretty technocratic vision of a city where a lot of data is collected centrally, and then more or less automatically certain kind of processes are triggered off, and the city would be optimized, but the citizens wouldn't be really in the loop in terms of voicing their own interests and in terms of creating new kinds of opportunities and spaces for creativity and all this. This is now changing, that's my feeling. Politicians and also computer science people realize that you cannot make certain kind of things happen in such a top-down way. And you need to have citizen engagement. You need to create this opportunity for participation, to feed in new ideas, to engage in all these kind of things. So that leads us to new kinds of platforms that need to be created. Now, I do think that it's important to create, for example, sharing economy platforms that are jointly owned and operated, where basically all sorts of companies and all sorts of people can feed in their own services and products, right? These are kind of things I see happen in the future. I would recommend that cities open up a lot of their data that are collected for purpose of governance. People would come up with new ideas how to make use of these data, how to improve efficiency of processes and increase better services for the citizens, and also to set up networks between cities with similar or with complementary interests in order to help each other to accomplish certain kind of tasks and find new solutions to challenges. And finally, I'd like to recommend to set up these city Olympics where you would have a number of different disciplines like reduce CO2 emissions, for example, increase energy efficiency, or increase citizen engagement, or whatever. And so one would have these competitions which are fun and engaging, and we would really try to be better in those dimensions that are important to master the challenges of the future. But after those Olympics, all the knowledge that has been created by all those cities would be opened up for everyone else to copy this, in the sense of open innovation, to really accelerate the spreading of the very best ideas that have been created around the globe.
Thank you. On that note, on a call for City Olympics, I want to thank you for joining this session. I'm just going to hijack one of the slides you've used on the maker spaces. And I know that Rotterdam is an interesting place already in terms of makerspaces, my work at the Center for Innovation at Leiden University in The Hague, we have a center there doing similar work. There's a lot of, and the map shows it already, it's nearly not enough. If you look at the kind of innovation, labs, studios, makerspaces that are coming up, experimentation is needed. The open-ended point of it, the co-creation point of these makerspaces is key. I think we've heard one of the examples with Nervousnet being one of these makerspaces, virtually as much as physical. We'd like to hear more about that, probably here at Delft as well,
Absolutely.
and in the broader region. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining, and
Thanks for joining. And